My name is Amelia Mullins. I'm 31 years old. And if I've learned anything in the last year, it's that sometimes the person you trust the most can erase you so completely, you start to question if you ever existed in their story at all. This isn't one of those triumphant revenge stories. It's about something quieter, harder to put into words. It's about the dignity you discover when the one who betrayed you is betrayed themselves. It's about watching a lie unravel so slowly at first you ignore it until suddenly it's all you can see. For 3 years, I was the anchor in my relationship, the steady one, the boring one, as he would later call me. My boyfriend Daniel was the dreamer, the artist. He lived in bursts of color and light-chasing visions through his camera lens. I admired that about him, maybe even envied it. When we first met, I was working as a systems coordinator at a mid-sized company, practical and predictable, while he was serving coffee part-time and saving up for his first professional camera. He had this spark, this way of seeing beauty in the unlikeliest places, a crooked window frame, a shadow crossing someone's cheek. I didn't just fall for him. I fell for the world he carried inside his head. So I made his dream my own. When he wanted to move closer to the city for more opportunities, I found a better job there. When rent got steep, I picked up freelance work on weekends to keep us afloat. I told myself it was teamwork, a partnership. He would chase passion, I would provide stability. And one day those two pieces would merge into a life worth building. Every late night, he stayed up editing every gallery he dragged me to, every half-baked idea he abandoned halfway through. I supported it all. His happiness was mine. His victories, no matter how small, felt like ours. I told myself this was love, that my sacrifice was proof of it. But the cracks started showing a year ago. At first, they were easy to dismiss. He spent more time glued to his phone. He said it was networking, connecting with other creatives. But the phone was always face down when I entered the room. Passwords suddenly locked away every part of his digital life. The transparency we once had, the late-night debriefs of our days, faded into single-word replies. And then there was Alyssa. Her name slipped into conversation casually at first. She was a photographer too, someone he'd met at a gallery event. His tone was professional, almost respectful, but slowly her name carried weight, a kind of reverence he never used with me anymore. Alyssa says a true artist doesn't hide behind a 9-to-5, he muttered, once his voice sharp with judgment. I laughed, trying to diffuse the sting. Well, I'm glad one of us has a 9-to-5, or we'd be living out of a shoebox. He didn't laugh. He just looked at me with this cool, dismissive gaze as if stability was suddenly a flaw. Soon, Alyssa's life became his gospel. She lived in a converted loft, traveled constantly, breathed passion into everything she touched. She was bold, fearless, is untethered. In his eyes, she was art. And me, I was the woman who paid the bills, the background character, the steady ground he could abandon once he found his wings. I felt it like I was just a stepping stone, something useful only until he reached higher. But I swallowed the thought, buried it under excuses. I told myself I was being insecure, that admiration wasn't love, that our bond was stronger than some whirlwind fascination. But every time he said her name, something inside me chipped away. I finally tried to reach him. One night, I sat across from him at our kitchen table, my heart racing. "Daniel," I said softly, "I feel like you're drifting away from me. Can we talk about it?" He let out a heavy sigh, exaggerated, almost theatrical. "Nothing's wrong, Amelia. You're overthinking. I'm just focused right now. My creativity's finally flowing and I need to ride it." The way he said focused with that sharp little edge made it clear I was the distraction. So I backed off. I told myself he was right, that my doubts were just paranoia, that if I kept supporting him, everything would fall into place. Until the night he came home with that look. Not the look of someone tired from a shoot, not the look of someone excited to share new work. It was the look of someone holding a secret, someone rehearsing a script they knew would break me. He set his camera bag on the counter, the silence between us thick as smoke. I could hear my pulse in my ears. "What is it, Daniel?" I asked quietly. "Just tell me." He met my eyes, and the warmth I had known for 3 years was gone. His voice was flat, clinical. "This isn't working, Amelia." My chest tightened. "What isn't working?" "We can fix it. Just be honest with me." He ran his hand through his hair, avoiding my gaze. "It's not about fixing anything. It's about honesty. And the truth is, I can't do this anymore." I felt my breath catch. My voice cracked. "Are you saying you want to break up?" He gave a bitter little laugh. "Break up, no. Think of it as realignment. This relationship was just a stage I needed to move through." And then, like a dagger slipped between my ribs, he said it. Amelia, I've been in love with someone else this whole time. The words hung heavy, suffocating, impossible. My world tilted, but I forced myself to stay still. In that moment, I wanted to scream, to demand why, to beg for names, explanations, reasons. But something colder, harder took hold inside me. I looked at him, my face blank, my voice steady. Okay, just one word. He blinked, startled. He had expected fireworks, tears, rage, a performance to match his. Instead, he was met with silence. And in that silence, I realized the woman he thought he was discarding was no longer there to play the victim. I didn't give him the storm. No screaming, no pleading, no desperate promises to be better. Instead, I stood up, walked into our bedroom, and began to pack. Not in fury, not in haste. Methodically. I folded each shirt with calm precision, rolled my socks into pairs, stacked my books into a cardboard box I'd been saving from a recent delivery. Behind me, I could feel the weight of his confusion pressing against the doorframe. I didn't turn to look, but I knew his eyes were on me, waiting, calculating. This wasn't the script he'd written in his head. He had expected me to fight, to claw at him for mercy, to validate his betrayal by proving I couldn't live without him. But all he got was the sound of zippers and the rustle of fabric. At one point, his voice cracked the silence. Amelia, what are you doing? You're actually leaving. I didn't answer. My hands were steady as I tucked a framed photo, one of the few of myself alone, between layers of sweaters. The silence was louder than any shouting could have been. An hour later, I zipped up my last duffel bag. The room was stripped bare, not of furniture, but of meaning. Every object left behind felt like a discarded shell belonging to someone I no longer recognized. When I stepped into the living room, he was still standing there, stunned. His expression wavered between indignation and disbelief. You're not even going to fight for this, he demanded, his voice rising. After everything we've shared, after everything I've given you. I paused at the doorway, my keys cold in my palm. I turned my head just enough to meet his eyes. You didn't give me everything, Daniel. You gave me a role, and I'm done playing it. His lips parted, but no words came out. He was choking on the silence I left behind. And then I walked out. No slammed door, no final insult. Just the soft click of a lock sealing the end of us. The first few weeks in my new apartment were hollow. The walls were bare, the air heavy with absence. I would set down my keys, and the sound would echo as if reminding me I was alone. But there was also relief. No more second-guessing, no more competing with a ghost named Alyssa. Just me and the daunting, liberating emptiness of a blank canvas. I filled my nights with quiet rituals. I started running again, pounding the pavement until my chest burned, letting the rhythm of my steps drown out the echo of his voice. I reconnected with friends I had drifted away from, friends who reminded me of who I had been before I became his shadow. On weekends, I tinkered with small projects, DIY repairs, or organizing things I never had time for when my life revolved around his. Slowly, the apartment began to reflect me, my taste, my colors, my space. There were moments I woke up reaching for him, muscle memory tugging at my chest, but those moments faded quicker each time. It wasn't strength that kept me going, it was clarity. Because I knew what he wanted, the dramatic scene, the proof that I still revolved around him. He wanted me to beg to rage, to confirm that I was broken without him. But I wouldn't give him that. My dignity wasn't loud or showy. It was quiet, patient. The dignity of walking away without leaving a trace of the wreckage behind. One night, I stood by the window of my tiny apartment, looking out at the city lights, the hum of traffic below, the flicker of neon signs. The life moving on without me, it all felt foreign, yet oddly comforting. And in that moment, I whispered to myself, he didn't leave me. He set me free. The words settled into me like a promise, and I believed them. 6 months passed. 6 months of quiet rebuilding. 6 months of relearning how to live a life that belonged to me, not to someone else's dream. My apartment didn't echo anymore. It breathed. I had plants on the windowsill that tilted toward the morning sun, framed photos of hikes I'd taken alone, a small desk where I started sketching again, something I hadn't touched since college. The silence that once felt suffocating had become a balm. So when my friend Marisol suggested we grab a drink one Friday night, I almost said no. I'd grown protective of my peace. But something told me it was time to test myself, step back into the world that had once revolved around Daniel. The bar was loud, filled with laughter and clinking glasses. I hadn't been in one since before the breakup. Sitting there with Marisol, I felt almost normal until she hesitated, her eyes flickering with something unspoken. Amelia, she said carefully, fingers tracing the rim of her glass. Have you heard about Daniel? The name landed like a pebble in still water, sending ripples across my chest. I hadn't spoken it in months. I shook my head. No, I don't keep up with him. Marisol exhaled as though she'd been bracing herself. Well, you should know. Alyssa, she's engaged. I blinked, engaged to Daniel. Her face softened with something between pity and disbelief. No, to someone else. Another photographer she met in LA. He proposed last week. For a moment, I thought she was joking. The irony was too sharp, too cruelly perfect. But the seriousness in her eyes told me otherwise. And Daniel, I asked quietly, my voice calm, detached. Falling apart, she said. Completely blindsided. Alyssa cut him off. Ghosted him. She's already posting pictures with her fiancé. It's messy. I leaned back, the noise of the bar fading into a dull hum. There it was, the cosmic justice. The very betrayal he had staged so carefully against me had been dealt to him swift and merciless. But the strangest thing, I didn't feel triumphant. No rush of satisfaction, no smug vindication. Just a quiet confirmation of what I'd always known in my gut. I had never been chosen. Not really. He had been a man intoxicated by illusion, and illusions always vanish. Marisol reached for my hand, her voice soft. You don't deserve to know this, but I thought you should. So you'll understand you weren't the problem. You were never the problem. I squeezed her fingers, gratitude warming the edges of my chest. I already knew that I said, and I meant it. Still that night, as I walked back to my apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about the symmetry of it all. Daniel had wanted passion fire, a soulmate who saw him as more than steady ground. He got it, and she left him standing on ashes. The thought didn't make me happy, but it made me free. Freer than I had been even in those first weeks alone, because the truth was undeniable now. His betrayal had never been about my shortcomings. It had been about his illusions, and now he was living inside the wreckage of them. I went to bed that night with a strange calm in my chest, unaware that the next storm was already gathering and that Daniel wasn't done with me yet. The first text came a week later, a single bland line that almost felt like a test. Hey, hope you're doing well. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. For a second, the muscle memory of old habits whispered back, respond, be polite, keep the peace. But I put the phone face down, no reply. 3 days later, another message lit up the screen. I've been thinking about you a lot. Still, I didn't answer. Then the drip became a flood. At first, casual updates about his day, then apologies, then confessions. I miss our talks. I miss you. I made a mistake, Amelia. Please just talk to me. When I didn't respond, he escalated to calls. The first rang out while I was cooking dinner, the sound sharp and insistent. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was there, trembling and low. I know I hurt you. But Alyssa, she wasn't who I thought she was. You were always the one who understood me. Please just give me a chance to explain. It was almost pathetic. The man who once looked at me like I was an obstacle was now clawing at the memory of the stability he'd discarded. The boring rock he'd mocked had become the lifeline he was desperate to cling to. But I wasn't his rock anymore. Soon the pressure expanded. His mother sent me a long text, Amelia, please. Daniel's not himself. He knows he made a mistake. Don't punish him forever. You were always the best thing that happened to him. Even one of his friends called his voice syrupy with persuasion. You know him better than anyone. He needs you. Don't let him drown like this. Each attempt felt like a hook baited with guilt and obligation. But I had learned to recognize the pattern. This wasn't love. It wasn't even remorse. It was desperation. Manipulation dressed up as longing. One night, I sat on my couch with my phone buzzing beside me, unread messages piling up. I stared at it, then whispered out loud as if to remind myself that's not my life anymore. And I meant it. I turned the phone off, set it in a drawer, and walked to my window. The city outside was alive with strangers' stories, lights flickering like reminders of how vast the world was. He wanted me to step back into his script, but I wasn't his supporting character anymore. I had written myself out of his story. And the irony was, the quieter I stayed, the louder his desperation grew. It was a Friday night. My apartment was calm, filled with the quiet hum of the lamp on my desk and the soft rustle of pages as I read. For once, the silence didn't ache. It felt like home. Then came the knock. Loud, urgent, the kind of knock that demanded to be answered. I froze, my chest tightening. No one knocked like that unless they carried trouble with them. Slowly I stood, walked to the door, and peered through the peephole. It was him, Daniel. His hair was unkempt, his eyes bloodshot, his posture slouched, as if the weight of the world had finally crushed him. He looked nothing like the man who had once declared me too stable for his wild creative life. I opened the door, not out of curiosity, but because I wanted this chapter to end on my terms. Amelia, he breathed. His voice cracked, almost pleading. I know this is insane. I had to see you. I leaned against the frame, my face calm, unreadable. Why? His hands shook as he gestured vaguely, as if trying to grasp the words from thin air. Alyssa. She wasn't who I thought she was. She left me. She used me. And the whole time I kept thinking about you, about what I threw away. I tilted my head, studying him like a stranger. That sounds awful, Daniel, but why bring it to me? Because you're my rock, he said quickly. Desperation spilling from every syllable. You always were. You understood me. You kept me grounded. I was a fool, Amelia. Please, I need you. There it was, the performance he'd expected from me months ago. The begging, the raw confession, the admission of loss. Only this time the roles were reversed. I stepped back, putting distance between us. My voice was steady, almost cold. No. You don't need me. You need the version of me you left behind, and she doesn't exist anymore. His face crumpled, confusion and panic flashing in his eyes. What are you saying? You don't forgive me? I met his gaze, unwavering. I'm saying I built a life without you. And it's a life I won't compromise again. You chose her, Daniel. And that choice doesn't vanish just because it burned you. He shook his head, tears streaking down his cheeks. Please, don't do this. I have nothing left. For the first time, I felt something stir, not pity, not anger, but clarity. I saw him for what he was, a man searching for shelter in the ruins of his own decisions. I straightened my hand, resting on the door. You're right about one thing. You have nothing left, and that's not my problem. His mouth opened, but before another word could escape, I closed the door. The sound was quiet, almost gentle, but it was absolute. On the other side, I heard a muffled sob, then footsteps retreating down the hall. On my side, I felt nothing but stillness. Not relief, not triumph, just the undeniable truth that the story was over. I turned back to my apartment, the space I had built, the life I had rebuilt, and for the first time in years, I felt whole. Daniel's chapter in my life had ended, and mine finally had begun.